Again, welcome everyone, or good morning or good afternoon everyone. Thank you for joining this informative webinar, Sustainability in Strata. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. Sustainability is a topic we should be speaking of more, especially when it comes to our homes. Today, we have the pleasure of having Fiona Netting join us from the Wollongong City Council. Fiona has over 20 years experience making the region a greener place, and she's extremely passionate about sustainability and is here to discuss the opportunities to make your scheme more sustainable. Welcome, Fiona.
Thank you very much, John. Thanks for having me, everyone.
Absolute pleasure. Great to have you, Fiona, and thanks for taking time to meet us today. As a quick housekeeping note, everyone, we'll be answering questions at the end of this webinar. If you have any questions, please pop them into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Today, we are talking about FOGO, which stands for Food Organics, Garden Organics. This is an easy way to implement food recycling into your building and how we can all work together to create more environmentally friendly communities. So many of us, myself included, forget how much of an impact we can have in our homes. As many of you know, living in an apartment block can present unique challenges when it comes to sustainability. With a large number of people living in close proximity, it's important that we all do our part to reduce our environmental impact and create a more sustainable future. Here in Wollongong, we've seen some fantastic examples of sustainability, such as the council recently adopting the Sustainable Wollongong 2030 strategy, and us being home to the Sustainable Buildings Research Centre, which is developing technologies towards greener buildings. But it's just not the big developments that are making a difference. Here in Wollongong, we've seen Strata schemes implementing a range of sustainable practices, from installing solar panels and LED lighting to promoting waste reduction and recycling programs. At the end of the day, we all have a role to play in creating more sustainable communities. By working together and sharing our knowledge and experiences, we can create a better future for ourselves, our families, and our planet. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Fiona to get us started on exploring the different ways in which we can create a sustainable Strata scheme and make a real difference to the world around us. Thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to your participation in the discussion ahead. Over to you, Fiona.
Great. Thank you so much, John, for that fabulous introduction. So just to let you know, here at Council, I'm part of the Environment and Conservation Services team, and I coordinate a small team of very passionate ladies in the green team, and we promote and educate on waste education, which is quite a broad area. And today we're going to be focusing on FOGO. So just before we do kick off, I was hoping to do a quick poll. There's just two questions that I'd really love you to answer for me so I can get a bit of an understanding as to where we're at with FOGO. The first question is, do you currently have a green lidded FOGO bin at your site or unit block that you're probably currently using for garden waste and maybe food waste? And the second one is, do you currently FOGO? So I'll just give you a little bit of time just to fill those in for me. Okay, so most people have a green lidded solo bin on site, which is great, because once you actually have that bin on site, it actually means you are able to FOGO. And do you currently FOGO? We've got 40% yes, 33% no.
Well, that's really good in that. Well, hopefully the 60% will be able to share some knowledge today with you, Fiona.
Great, that's great. Okay, that's good. Okay, well, we'll go to our first slide. Thank you. So we're just going to have a look all about FOGO, what it is, why we're doing it, who's doing it, how to use it. So we've got a take 5, bit of a snappy sort of approach to just reminding people about lining it, closing it, emptying it, placing it, and popping it out to the curb. And then we're going to do a bit of a virtual tour of the composting process and the facility, so you understand exactly where it goes and what it gets turned into. Next slide, please. Okay, so the FOGO does stand for Food Organics and Garden Organics, as John stated before. So the green bin that used to be, or this bin that you have at home, that used to be just for garden is now for food as well as garden organics. So most councils in New South Wales will need to have FOGO by 2030. And Wollongong, we're lucky, is ahead of the pack. So we began trialling FOGO in 2019, and at the end of 2021, we rolled it out to everyone in our government area. Next slide. So council's committed to helping create a sustainable and a climate resilient city, and plans have been put in place via the council's Climate Change Mitigation Plan 2020, which guides council's operations to have net zero emissions by 2030. So prior to introducing FOGO as well, I'll mention that most households, their red lidded bins, at least 40% was full of food waste. So you can see why this is an important waste stream to be targeting. Next slide, please. Okay, so this little pie chart here, this little image shows you the emissions profile for Wollongong Council, and it shows you where we need to be putting our resources and our efforts into. And as you can see, landfill is 85%. I will mention you've got street lights there being 6%. Some good news on that front. We actually have 18,218 street lights, in case you were ever wanting to know how many we had. And that, coupled with our 17 largest council facilities, are now 100% powered by renewable energy, as at the end of last year. So that switch is going to save 11,500 tonnes of carbon dioxide emissions a year. So as you can see by this chart, landfill is definitely the major source of council's emissions, and FOGO plays a major part in council being able to reduce our landfill emissions. The reason is FOGO reduces emissions because when decomposing organic material, food waste and what have you goes to landfill, it's in an anaerobic environment. It means there's no air. And so because of that, it releases methane into the atmosphere. So for example, in a landfill situation, a head of lettuce would actually take up to 25 years to break down. So we don't want food waste going to landfill when we can have another really positive use for this material. Because as we like to say, once it goes into landfill, it does become waste. Whereas if we can stop it going to landfill, then it's a resource that we can reuse for other things. So composting, in contrast to a landfill, is aerobic. It's an aerobic process where air is incorporated, and that prevents the release of methane during the organic matter breaking down. Methane is 26 times more potent than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas, and it's a significant contributor to global greenhouse gas emissions. So when we think about it, 1 tonne of green waste in landfill creates approximately a tonne of CO2 equivalent emissions. So roughly, if FOGO saves us 40,000 tonnes from going to landfill, it's saving us 40,000 tonnes equivalent of CO2 being released into the atmosphere in Wollongong. Now, out of that 40,000, our aim is for 12,750 tonnes of food. The remainder, 27.5, is for garden organics. So food is the new item that we're really trying to capture and avoid sending to landfill. Next slide, please. So saving space in our landfill is a really important reason why we want to be doing FOGO. By diverting that 40,000 tonnes annually of food and garden away from the landfill at White Scully, it's increasing the longevity of our landfill space. There is limited capacity at our landfill at White Scully. We are in our final cell, and we're predicted to run out around about 2050. So when that happens, there's not really a lot of space around here to create another landfill. So potentially it will need to be transported out of the area for processing if local solutions can't be found. So from a financial sustainability perspective, every tonne of waste that council's responsible for that doesn't end up in landfill saves us money as a residence. So every tonne of waste also deposited at our landfill incurs a levy of $151.60 that we have to pay to the New South Wales EPA. So those costs, the government costs, are increasing every year also for every tonne that we send to landfill. So the more we can divert, so our soil code, by processing 40,000 tonnes of FOGO waste per year, is going to divert and save us money for the costs going to landfill. And then that fee can be passed back on to residents via the annual waste collection fee, the waste levy that people are charged in their rate notices, and also gate fees when you go to the tip. Next slide. Yeah, the finished FOGO compost we can reuse locally, and council has been using it. We use it as part of our urban greening program when we're planting trees, and we're also using it on our sports fields as like a top dressing. So it's amazing to think that our leftover food can be turned into a quality product, a soil conditioning product that we can use at council. And then that reduces the need for synthetic fertilizers as well. Next slide. So in May this year, a few weeks ago, we actually just did a recent post just to let the community know that since we started doing our FOGO at the end of 2021, we've actually collected over 78,397 tonnes of food and organic waste and diverted that away from landfill. So a little bit more than what's in that image there that you're looking at. But this does give you a snapshot about, you know, how much of that tonnage is actually food compared to the garden. And also when it's broken down, how much of it is turned into a compost. So 25,000 tonnes approximately turned into a rich compost. And also we have quite low contamination rates in Wollongong, which is fabulous. Next slide, please. Okay, so the liners that we use in FOGO, these little bags are actually compostable bags. They are not plastic, and they actually have that seedling logo image on them and that number, which is an Australian standard number, 4736. That just means if you did need to purchase bags outside of council at some stage, that's what you would be looking for when you were buying them. You actually don't need to use liners, but a lot of people do like them. But if you choose not to use a liner, then that's fine. You can put the food scraps straight into the green bin or straight into the caddy into the bin. Now, you do get 2 rolls of liners. There's 75 bags in a roll, and council is distributing those to residents. There's a new distribution coming soon. There are some old liners available while stocks last from a number of our libraries, Helensburgh, Thurrool and Dapto Library, as well as from our head office building here in Wollongong, if you do need some in the interim. Now the liners, you know, when you feel them, you'll notice they're very, very soft. They're compostable and they're made from cornstarch. So they're designed to break down very quickly into a compost, especially a commercial composting environment, because it gets very hot. And that's why it's easier to break down than a plastic bag that would not break down. So we're only asking for compostable bags in FOGO, no other types of bags. I'm just going to do a little demonstration now for you on how to line your FOGO caddy. So this is the FOGO caddy that you'll receive. We just take a bag from the roll. It's easy to just get your fingers in the top and just separate. Really easy. Sorry, I'm fumbling here. And then just give it a little shake. Pop that on either side of our FOGO caddy. They are very snug and they are designed to fit our 8-litre FOGO caddy. So you just snip it on there either side like that, and it's ready for you to put your food items in the caddy. It's good to, for your liners, as far as trying to get as much life out of your bags so they don't break down too quickly, we just suggest to put them in a cool, dry place away from light, and then they will last you longer. Okay, next slide, please. So With the liners too, this is a whole list of the different types of liners that you can buy at the different supermarkets, and there's also options for online. The reason we show these are on Council's website. If you go to the grocery store, the first time you look for these sorts of bags, you will be surprised at how many green and brown bags are staring at you. So we've just tried to really break it down to the suitable bags that are compostable for the FOGO system, with the seedling logo and that Australian standard. The ones that we use, these composter pack ones that the council orders, they're made from corn. And the reason we use corn is that it's an annually renewable crop. So unlike trees, corn can regrow and be harvested in a single season. So the crops are deliberately sourced from international GMO-free regions. So that means they're not genetically modified in any way, and they have high levels of rain. So it reduces the need for irrigation. And it's interesting to know that the corn kernels used are actually what they call third grade corn. So it's actually the sort of corn that would have been left to rot. The farmers wouldn't have used it anyway because it's not at a suitable grade for human and animal consumption, but it's totally suitable to be turned into compostable bags. So next slide, please. So it's important when you're putting your food scraps into your little FOGO caddy, make sure you seal it, close it well. It just helps to reduce any smells and especially pests over the summer months. You can sign up to receive a FOGO caddy if you don't have one already. So that's through Council's website or the Wollongong Waste app that we have also available. So if for some reason you've moved into a unit and they do FOGO and you don't have a caddy, or your caddy's been broken, you can log in and order a new one. Like I said, you can use any other container. If you've got something that's more aesthetically pleasing, feel free to use that. You don't need to use our caddy, or if you don't have room on your bench top. Some units are quite small in the kitchen. And so, if you can come up with a different option that's a bit smaller, then that's great as well. After the caddy, make sure you wash it, and just make sure if you also need a large green lidded silo bin like the one here, make sure you ask your Strata manager and they can contact us. So send your details through to them if you don't have FOGO currently, or you need more green bins for FOGO. Maybe even you have too many red bins and you need to rationalise and reduce the bins. So we're happy to work with you. So please make sure you send your interest through to your Strata manager, and we will get onto that quickly for you. So emptying the caddy every 2 to 3 days, reason being the compostable bags break down very quickly, especially if you've got a lot of moist food products in them. So we're suggesting you tie it, carry the caddy itself out to this bin and pop it in. So therefore you won't have any blowouts and problems with bags breaking on you. Another suggestion in your bin would be to just move any grass aside and put your bag in and cover it with a bit of grass or some leaves. Once again, just helps to deter any blowflies or any pests that you might have, especially in the summer months. And remember, the green FOGO bin goes out weekly for collection, which is great. Next slide, please. There's lots of things we can put in FOGO. All food waste and all garden waste. So when we say all food, literally, even the things like smelly chicken carcasses, prawn heads, big, meat bones, all of that can go in. If you're cleaning out your pantry, flour, rice, anything you might be out of date or have weevils or whatever, feel free to throw it in because it's all food, okay? Out of date things in your freezer, leftovers that the kids might not have eaten for their school lunch, all of that can go into FOGO. Next slide, please. There's also items we can't put into FOGO. Things like tissues and serviettes. Thinking about items that we've used with bodily fluids, we don't put that into FOGO. No hair, no dog poo or kitty litter. Cardboard, like paper and cardboard, even your pizza boxes, it's actually best to put them in your recycling bin. So pizza boxes, just make sure, it's empty of food. Even if it's got a little bit of oil, it's fine for your recycling bin. So it's actually better, to return that into a new paper product rather than putting things like that into FOGO. So we're just trying to limit FOGO for food only and garden only. And it is a commercial composting system, not a home composting system, whereby some of these other items such as hair and vacuum cleaner dust, you would probably add to. So next slide, please. Okay, so now we're embarking on the journey of FOGO. So once it gets to the curbside, it's picked up by the truck. Where does it go? So we'll be looking, you'll understand where your banana peel and your food and all of that waste goes to and how it ends up into this beautiful soil product. If you've ever done home composting, the journey of FOGO from caddy to compost is actually not a lot of difference. It's just about 40,000 tonnes per year more material than you would have at home, which is why we need a large scale composting facility. And we are so lucky because Soilco is local. They're only at Kembla Grange. There's only like 7 facilities in Australia that actually do this type of processing. And so we're lucky we don't have to transport our waste long distances. We have it right here in our own backyard. Next slide, please. You'll see here, so this is a Soilco facility at Kembla Grange. The trucks come in, they open up these huge sliding doors and they tip all the FOGO waste onto that huge pile before that machine, known as an excavator, grabs it and places it onto a hopper, which then mediates the delivery of the material to a conveyor belt before going into a big trommel, a big circular trommel. At this point, items that are smaller than 60 mils, they fall out onto a separate conveyor belt. And this is mainly grass clippings. So we know all the smaller stuff's fine to go through. It doesn't need extra sorting, whereas anything large continues up the line for further inspection. So next slide, please, and we'll have a look at what that looks like. So you might be surprised, there are people manually sorting and looking through the stuff that comes across that conveyor belt. So it's going up into this small room. There's at least 4 people up there. And even though they can't grab out everything, they're grabbing out the large stuff that's very visible and is clearly a contaminant. So anything from, they pull out plastic bags, flower pots, takeaway food packaging, garden hoses. They've had whole rolls of carpet. You can see here we've got even a Vivian Westwood shoe. We get lots of balls. As you can see there, we've got one picture, but heaps of balls. The contaminants are all pulled out and they fill a 20 cubic metre skip bin every 2 weeks with contamination. This is not just Wollongong Council's FOGO, of course, it's a number of councils' FOGO material as well as some businesses. But you can see the amount of contamination. So we definitely have a little bit of room for improvement when it comes to what we're putting in the FOGO bin. After sorting Wollongong's FOGO waste though, we only have 0.3% contamination. So that's way less than other council areas. So overall, our Wollongong residents are doing really well, which is pleasing to note. We just want them to, I guess, put out more regularly and people that aren't FOGOing, trying to get them on board. Next slide, please. The material then passes under a large magnet and that grabs out any metals which have made their way into the green bin. Now, what emerges here is actually a lot of metal cutlery, which has accidentally probably slipped into the FOGO caddies when people are emptying their food waste. So if you've got kids emptying the food into the caddies, just keep a watchful eye or double check that no cutlery is also falling into that, because you don't want to lose your cutlery either. From here, the material's passing through a low-speed shredder because there's still potentially other foreign objects, as you can see what he's holding in his hand. So this large piece of metal, things that can't be lifted by a normal magnet, could potentially be a missile totally break the shredder and the system if it were a high-speed shredder. So that's why we have it at low speed, so we can still try and grab out any items like this. The material then rejoins the grass clippings, which were earlier separated, and then they're added to another large stockpile. Now we're ready for the cooking process. So next slide. So you can see here that image in the middle is actually large tunnels that they've created, and there's about 4 of these large tunnels. They're about to begin testing on these, and they're specifically fitted out concrete tunnels. They will hold 800 tonnes of compost material. The tunnels have air that's pumped through them from the floor, and water can also be added to adjust the moisture quantities. The mix of air and water changes depending on the season. The air being pumped through means there's no need to turn the compost like on a traditional home compost situation, and it's all finished in 21 days. So to help you picture what that looks like, you could liken it to your oven at home. You put your chicken in to roast. Once you put the chicken in the oven, all the ways to modify it and manage the cooking process comes from the outside. And that's the same here with these types of ovens. Next slide. So the hygienisation stage is a method of heating up the compost material to a really high percentage, but not for too long, because what they're aiming for, they're trying to kill the harmful bacteria. So it needs to be hot enough to kill that, but not so it goes for too long that it kills the good bacteria that they also need for the composting process. Following the hygienisation stage, the mix is then tested for Salmonella and E. coli, as well as other bacteria, just to ensure that they have been destroyed. Because at the end of the process, the compost material is tested in a lab for any remaining germs as well as particle sizing, and it indicates the composting process is finished. Once it's safe to use, they deem it suitable for any application, including growing vegetables. So it's totally super healthy to use. So next slide, please. The finished compost, as we know, is only as good as what each individual puts into their green bin. Contamination within FOGO is still a problem, but even though it's not high, but it is still a problem and one we can improve upon. Even with human sorters pulling out plastics and glass, there's still some that's left in there. We would like everyone to put their FOGO bins out weekly for collection and make sure only the right items go in. Even if you think, oh, I only have one little bag of FOGO, each of those one little bags adds up. So even if you live by yourself and you don't generate a lot, please put your FOGO bin out for collection because it will all make a difference. There are specific blends of compost and topsoil that are made for different applications, as you can see here in this image. Different markets, different seasons and different uses. So some different areas that council uses the finished compost is in top dressing, sporting fields and planting trees as part of our urban greening program. If you're looking to use the FOGO compost at home, there's only one place currently locally sort of that we can buy it, and that's at the Albion Park Landscaping Supplies. So it's not technically in our Wollongong area, but it's close enough. It's called Go Compost, and the Go Compost products are a mix of the FOGO material from various councils and businesses. And Sorco's working actually on having a retail supply in our council area in the near future. Next slide, please. So just recapping the process, your food generation, your food scraps goes into the caddy, goes into your FOGO bin, then it goes to the curb to be picked up by the trucks, taken to Sorco for that FOGO process, which turns it into a natural soil conditioning that we can use. Next slide, sorry. So hopefully all of this information has helped you to feel a little bit more confident about FOGO. Hopefully it's answered any questions or concerns, but we've got time at the end for some questions. Like I said, it's a beautiful soil conditioning product that comes out that we can reuse, and rather than sending it to landfill. So it's a great outcome by using FOGO, and really it's only a small change. Instead of putting it in your red bin, your food scraps, you're now putting it into your FOGO bin, your green lidded bin. So just another invitation, this is for the green team, part of the other roles of what I'm doing. We offer a home composting program that's available to people in unit blocks for free. So if you're interested, please reach out to your Strata manager and let them know you're interested so they can send me your details. We can contact you. When we say it's free, the process is we come out, we literally have a chat with interested people within the unit block. We find out what volumes you're producing. Do you have a garden? Do you have space? Do you live near a creek? We look at all those sorts of issues or things that could be issues. And then we'll talk about what it is you would like to do. Would you be comfortable doing composting? We have things like this compost tumbler that we can include for free. We can install at unit blocks, which is an off the ground sort of a turning thing, which is sometimes easier for some people to manage. We have these cute little worm farms. They come in different colours, and if people prefer something small like that on their balcony that they want to just manage their fruit and vegetable scraps themselves, that's also an option. So we can offer bokashi, composting, worm farming. So have a think about that. And like I said, feel free to ask any questions or to let the body corp or strata know you're interested. And we can also do further talks if you can, things like recycling, understanding a bit more about recycling or how to use the 3-bin system, the annual household cleanup program. There's problem waste we can talk about, things like plastic-free Wollongong, even about how to avoid food waste to begin with. So there's lots of things we can do via webinars or even face-to-face. So there are other options available to you. So you can keep up to date via Council's Facebook page, the Wollongong Waste app to put on your phone. And even we have a sustainable newsletter that you can hop into Council's website and sign up for if you'd like to find out more. So thank you for listening. And yeah, hopefully we'll have some questions and answers.
Excellent. Thank you, Fiona. It was really thorough and comprehensive. I really appreciate that. Yeah, and look, this will be the first of, I think, quite a few of these webinars. I'm one who is a champion for sustainability in our community, and I'm a big advocate for it. So thank you again to the council and yourself, Fiona, for partnering us in that journey. We do have a few questions, Fiona, which take a sip of water because you haven't finished talking, unfortunately. There's some questions here for you from some of our attendees. First question will be, is it okay to line the FOGO liner with newspaper to absorb moisture from food scraps?
Okay. I would rather say no. It's probably best. I mean, newsprint, has sort of newsprint has inks and that on it. They've gotten better over time. But look, the best thing to do, I do understand about the moisture. If need be, just even a little square of paper kitchen towel to pop in to line the caddy. You can even, sometimes I just sprinkle a bit of bicarb soda, because that also absorbs some moisture, just like it would, in other methods for using bicarb. So that's another suggestion. But I'd rather probably not newspaper. I mean, it wouldn't be a major contaminant, but it's probably not desirable.
Great, excellent. Is FOGO available in all councils, to your knowledge?
It's not available in all councils as yet, but the New South Wales government is trying to make it mandatory. I think it was even by about 2030, they are wanting all councils across Australia to roll out FOGO. So we're lucky we've got a fair few in our, like Shellharbour, they do FOGO and they use our landfill and they use Sorco, or they were using Sorco as well. But yeah, a lot of our local councils are using FOGO, and more will have to sort of come on board because they're being pushed, I guess, that direction. But the good thing is, the government is also providing grants available for councils also to install this sort of thing.
Great. And Warwick asked a question. The others were anonymous for anyone wondering, but Warwick asked a good question, which is a segue. Is there a list of FOGO councils, Fiona, that you know of that can be quick referenced, or is it just a matter of reaching out to your local council and asking the question?
Yeah, probably reaching out. I mean, I'm sure if you looked up your individual council, it would have something on their website. They're either going to say that the FOGO is part of their service that they deliver, or if it's not, then I would definitely be asking people to sort of potentially lobby their council to let them know that they're keen for that to start in their area. I mean, for us, like I said, we're lucky because, like I said, I think there's only 7 in Australia. So,
Yeah.
you know, you've got to have access to a large commercial composting facility. So that's something I guess that the government's going to have to look more into. Otherwise, it's going to cost a lot to get your material transported to those places. Soilco has had a big expansion, and with these new tunnels, they're going to have increased capacity. So potentially, who knows, they might end up with some Sydney FOGO product heading down our ways too. So we're lucky. All of our regional sort of areas, you know, you've got Kiamas and Wingecarribee and all that can get involved and come on board locally. So we're lucky, but yeah, some of the other council areas will have to probably be sending there.
Great, excellent. An anonymous attendee, how can households track their own usage of FOGO service, of this FOGO service? Is there any data available on the effectiveness of the service in reducing waste and promoting sustainability?
Okay, from an individual point of view, it would be, we wouldn't track that. In that earlier slide, we actually had how much the tonnages are that we've currently collected. And we're actually, it's interesting, we're actually waiting for a waste audit. We get a waste audit done every 3 years, and that was done just a couple of months ago. We are still waiting for the outcome of that. And look, if everyone's interested, or if there is interest, potentially once that comes through, we could even do a bit of a webinar on what that looks like. So it looks at all the 3 waste streams. So your recycling, your waste to landfill bin, as well as your FOGO bin. So it looks at exactly what those tonnages are, and it's a snapshot of the community, of course. So they will pick a sample size, you know, and it's representative of the whole community, and that's how they do their waste auditing. But that's always interesting information. So that tells us holistically, I guess, you know, how much we're collecting. We are still waiting on some more feedback, I guess, from our contractor, because we would like to understand a little bit more ourselves from council's education point of view, exactly who is or who isn't FOGOing, because then we can help to target education programs to maybe certain suburbs that are struggling a little bit more with it, or some areas that maybe have more contamination than others. But we currently don't have that information to that detail. But that is something that we're really pushing at the moment, because then we're sort of not running blind with stuff. We can sort of do a bit more targeted education and planning.
Well, any of that information, yeah, we'll talk and collaborate, and definitely I think a future webinar, but also in some of our content to our owners, would be good to share that information as a newsletter. Another question from the lovely Maria, one of my favorite people in Strata. She has a question: are there any smells, odors that would come from the FOGO bin that would dictate where it could be placed on the Strata property site? Thanks, Maria. It's a very good question.
Yeah, good question. I'll be honest, smells and pests are probably the biggest issue. When we've surveyed people, that usually comes back as the #1 reason that people, you know, might be a bit, they think it's a bit yuck. It actually doesn't have to be. There's a few things that you can do. So with the large FOGO bin itself, in a strata block, you can do a couple of things. You could put it, if you have a garden area outside and it's a bit shady, I'd suggest to probably place your bin there in that spot. Otherwise, if you have it down in a basement, you know, you're going to have more potential for odours and smells. It also depends on things like in a unit block, it depends on what you're currently doing with your garden waste. That's probably one of the biggest things. So if you've got a bit of, because some unit blocks, you know, they'll get somebody to come in and they take all the green waste away with them. Whereas I'd be suggesting that they keep some of that on site, so you can be layering your FOGO bin, even just dry leaves and twigs or something to help. Because then when you're putting your FOGO food bags, you can cover it with a bit of garden waste. So that's always helps to reduce smells. If people are using food that's really stinky, like chicken carcasses or prawn shells or things like that, and say your bin gets picked up on a Monday and you've had seafood on a Tuesday night, I would be suggesting put it straight into one of these little guys, put it into your freezer, And then on the bin day, grab that out. So anything that's particularly, attractive to pests and flies. Yeah. So, and look, in a unit block, there's always going to be, depending on how large your unit block is, usually you have those people that really take ownership of this sort of thing, and then other people that maybe are more, they just put anything in any bin. So if that's the case, you might want to put your FOGO bin, like I said, in a garden environment or somewhere where the people that really want to use it will use it properly, and not just have it lined up maybe with the red bins where people are just going to throw stuff randomly. So if you've got any problems like that, I'm happy, or I can pop you into contact with Ramondas as well. But between us, we've got some signage. We can even come and do some education and talks to some of the people. But, it's probably a matter of understanding who's going to use it right and who isn't. And then maybe trying just to separate where, so it's not as accessible, I guess, to some people that might not want to use it properly or be interested in how to FOGO.
Right.
It's a bit like that even with the composting. People that have got compost set out in the garden, it's about putting it somewhere where those that know and want to use it can, and then those that are, you don't necessarily want to invite to be participating in that, then that's okay too. That's your call. And then you set it up as such.
Yeah, great answer. And for those on Strata committees who play an active role, who, knowing Maria, who asked that question, she does, it's a really good agenda item just to have that discussion with your committee and drive the education piece with your owners. And I find in my experience, it's a really good talking point, and the learning material that is provided from councils is a really very clear and concise. It delivers in a clear and concise manner, which takes a lot of the grey out of it. But having those discussions at committee meeting level around sustainability or community initiatives is a really good agenda item, in my opinion. Yeah. I think our last question from Lynn, in your experience, Fiona, is there a problem with maggots in the FOGO waste that is encountered?
Okay, so in the caddy, I'd say no, because people are emptying their caddies regularly. And it's indoors, you can put it somewhere, flies aren't usually a problem as much indoors. So indoors, I've never heard problems with maggots indoors. Okay, your outdoor bin, same as when you're putting food waste in your red bin, there is a potential, especially in summer. In summer, we can have a problem with maggots. So the best thing that you can do, and in summer we're lucky though, because we have more garden waste, and this is where grass cuttings, some leaves, some twigs, just even if you can access, maybe have a bag of it that you can have next to the bin in a unit block, potentially, if that works. Just, you don't want everything taken off site, because you don't want a whole bin of just food. I mean, it still works, but potentially in summer, without anything layering it, you could end up having a problem, and it doesn't take a lot before you have a maggot explosion, and that's vile for everybody. So I don't think you need to have that. I think it's putting it somewhere where it's shady, making sure that you do have some garden waste, especially in the summer months, to try to cover the food. You can sprinkle a bit of bicarb in the bins, and encouraging people, like I said, with the smelly stuff, to keep that in their freezer until the bin day or the night before, and then pop it in. And then really you shouldn't have many issues. Hopefully that helps.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's very comprehensive. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of our webinar, and that's all our questions. Fiona, thank you so much for your time again. That was really informative, and yeah, I got a lot out of it. I'm hoping all our attendees got a lot out of it. Our social media team will post on our YouTube channel, and there'll be more information, I'm sure, in due course coming out from C&G around sustainability, and more webinars with the lovely Fiona. Warwick, thank you as well. Everyone, have a lovely afternoon. Enjoy the weather, and I wish you a good afternoon.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.